Alrighty, we are here with the finals of the 2024 Red Dragon Comics Cards and Games Materia Cup in Ottawa, Canada. A huge thank you again to Mike of Ready Check Raideo for getting me these videos. Otherwise, this gameplay would be lost to time. But thanks to his efforts, and he put in a lot of work to make this happen, people. Like, seriously. Here's our finals. We have looks like it's going to be Knights versus this Realm Monsters list. Earth, Water, Realm, a very different build than the one that won in Chicago. And Knights, a deck that historically has really struggled to do well in Top Cut. So a major props to Jonathan for finding his way into the here. So we're going to start with a Meath with a no search. It's very interesting. I don't know if we didn't have the multi-element card, if we just already have everything. And I see a Corilla in hand already, so that's a pretty good start. Curious what Robert's answers to this Knights deck are. I mean, we have the Shantoto, which is obviously like very good into any kind of aggression, but we don't have a lot of the like normal sweepers. There's no Amaterasus, no Mist Dragons. Lots of the cards that you would expect to be blowouts against this Knights deck just aren't here. I really think this might be a bit of an uphill battle for Robert. Draw into one of our Atomoses. It's not really what we want to see. That said, Jonathan shouldn't have any real monster removal. I mean, we can dull freeze the monsters with Laswell, but... And we do have a win card. That is an Evray in hand, so we can actually play this Atomos out if we wanted to. We're looking at the LB deck. I don't think we have any Lightning CP outside of Shantoto or Tyro, so it's going to be hard to get these clouds out to pop this Laswell here. Probably the ideal scenario is something like a Blue Worm to at least protect the backup and make this Laswell think twice about attacking. I see a Cleone in hand. There's the Tyro. Ditching quite a few cards. We're ditching both the Atomos and the Evray, and a zombie even. And you search ourselves any forward in the deck. Holding on to this Cleone, I'm a little surprised. I guess we're afraid of, I mean, Amaterasu is of course an extremely potent option from Jonathan, but I feel like this Corilla, if Jonathan has it in hand, like I think, we could be in a world of hurt. Is Jonathan considering Amaterasuing this? Well, I can't believe if this is the case. That would be very, very aggressive. I mean, we do have the active Meath. It's just the two cards, so you trade up on cards, which is kind of what you want to do. Thinks better of it. We're going to hold the cards in hand. We're going to let Robert get this search off. There's the Realm. Now, I don't remember seeing stuff like the Sahagin Tros combo that you can sometimes run to try to slow down these aggro decks in Robert's list. Let me pull it up and double check. This may be a very expensive Realm as well if we can get just two Knights to enter the field, which is not unreasonable if we have that Corilla in hand. Yeah, no real removal available with that Realm. But I don't know really how many other options Robert has. I mean, we have to get this monster count up in order to have cards like Gao and the Hippocampus to be impactful. We're thinking about what we want to do here. There's an Ezale for an Agrius. That'll freeze the Tyro. That's pretty good. That locks us out of the cloud access. And it looks like that's all we're going to do. We're going to swing with the Laswell here. It's going to get us... There's 9 bursts in Robert's deck. We're also going to get to rip the card out of the hand with the Laswell. But that does leave the one backup up for this realm. Now, Jonathan did kind of telegraph that he has the Amaterasu, so Robert might have to lead with his Cleone just to protect the realm. It's such an expensive realm at that point. We're thinking about the LB deck again. I'm just not sure. We have like Leos if we want to draw. I mean, the Zac doesn't clear anything if we have. I mean, we would just cast the Foint. No, we can't cast the Foint, so we don't have fire. And annoyingly, having to cast this Cleone now is like worst case scenario because that means that if we pull an Atomos out of the deck, the realm's already going to be our second cast. The Atomos isn't going to see a second cast happen. Can't imagine this is enough of a threat to force a Shantoto.
Sorry.
You're good. So there's the Cleone. Dump the whole hand for the realm. That's going to protect her from an Amaterasu. Jonathan reading Cleone. Really obnoxious card for any deck that's willing to give up the ability to play summons. The next time a summon is cast, it will sacrifice itself to cancel the summon. And then if it goes to the break zone for any reason, Robert does draw a card. So it kind of like turns your summon into I draw a card. Jonathan kind of has to decide here whether he wants to allow this or if he wants to try to draw to a second Amaterasu later. But regardless, this realm is going to get to resolve. We can pull out Behemoth. We're going to go Evre Atomos. Okay, Evre Atomos. Get our normal engine cards online. It's going to allow us to reactivate this Tyro, but that's no cards in hand and nothing that's going to stand in the way of this Laswell. Or even the Agrias at this point. We can use that, get ourselves one of those crystals. If we don't want to push to damage 3 for the Atomos. I mean, I have to imagine that this is where you gun it if you're Jonathan, right? You go drop the Corilla. You know Robert has no interaction, no ability to Shantoto you next turn. We can dull freeze these backups, lock them out of some stuff. Here's the Ramza. Ditching Corilla, Delita, and Unknown in hand. This might even be the Amaterasu. Yeah, we're going to give up on the Amaterasu, which I actually don't mind at all. Hit the Corilla. Now we're going to get 2 Dull Freezes off of this Laswell. We're hitting both of the backups. There's a Charlotte. That's a heck of a card. And a Delita. That's about as good as it gets. We get the protection for the Laswell. We get a card back off of the Delita, and we get to lock down this Atomos and probably this Realm. So Robert's got no cards in hands, no backup, and no blockers. I mean, I think this is leading towards a pretty swift game 2 here. I really don't see a world in which Robert's able to stabilize from this position. There's just so much damage threat on board. And Jonathan doesn't even have to commit to damage 3 here if he doesn't want to. He can just swing in with the Agrias, generate that crystal, and he's got lethal on board next turn anyway. I'm pulling back the ones that can't attack. Evre and Cleone are not monsters that have the ability to become forwards. We're still thinking here a little bit. I mean, this Ramza was that's about the best Ramza you could ever hope for. I'm going to swing in the Laswell. There's the Artemisian. I imagine that means we're still swinging Agrias here. Yep, we are. We do have the 4 Knights for Ramza as well, which is, I'm sure, very annoying for Robert. This realm is probably not long for this world either. There's the Shantoto. I mean, it's a good card, but with no cards in hand and no backups, we can't play it anyway. We're double checking the text on Realm, making sure it's only on Robert's turn that he gets the bounce. Trying to think what it could be. Something like a Mira could get us 2 casts so we can activate the backups. Mira into a blue worm. That gets us 2 casts and a card in hand. We can play Mira and Cloud. The Mira isn't going to live the turn, but it also isn't going to represent a point of damage with these Knights. That's a go-go Hippocampus. We're going to scoop him up. We're going to go to game 2. All right, so Robert's going to get to go first this time. Should help a little bit with staving off this aggro Knights deck. Both players taking a look at their openers. Looks like double Laswell in Jonathan's hand. I imagine that that's probably worth keeping. Robert says this hand isn't going to do it. We got to find another set of cards to give us a chance. And I mean, the wild thing about Knights is that it is not afraid of going second. Again, I think Laswell has historically been such a strong going second card anyway that sometimes you can go first and just generate no resources against this deck. I see a grip full of Knights. Robert going first. Draws a zombie for turn. Starting with a blue worm. It's not the worst. Does mean we probably don't have a backup. We're trying to decide if we want to go further. It looks like we're going to pass on just the blue worm. I see the Laswell, so I imagine that we're just going to immediately lock this blue worm down with the Laswell. Yep. Now, thankfully, Robert hasn't committed very much at this point, but Jonathan's sitting here with a full grip of Knights. We can go ahead and pass the turn there. There's a Realm, and didn't see what the other card is. Or, not Realm, Mira. The other monster support character. Gonna go Mira for Mira. Let's see what the Mira hits. Two blue worms and a Tonberry. I mean, Tonberry is interesting here because it does threaten a, to use a Magic the Gathering term, Death Touch blocker. We're going to go for blue worm. It's a little freer. We don't have to worry about the discard cost on the Tonberry. We're still looking for that backup as well. Jonathan still hasn't found the Corilla, which is nice. There's the zombie. It's going to get us back the Mira. Now, also, it could be decent for us. I mean, it's going to get dull frozen no matter what. I was going to say the Mira is a really nice way to have an infinite blocker, but with all the dull freeze Knights has access to, it's going to be very difficult for us to kind of loop this and have the ability to keep the chosen monster active before combat. Put a Leo down as well. A Zac. I mean, it's a bigger body than Leo, which is nice. That gives us 2 blockers that threaten this Laswell. But it is still not going to beat a Gorilla here. Assuming Jonathan drew one, or just 2 more Knights. We can Dull Freeze the Zombie and the Zac. Even using this Mira as a bit of a shield is going to be a bit annoying for us. We're still going to have to discard, go down to only 2 cards in hand. That does add more forwards, which means that a Shantoto would be pretty solid. I see a Ramza in hand, so we do have access to 2 Knights if we want them. I also see a Beatrix. It's a Delita. It's not going to do much here, I think. Maybe we're looking at casting this Ramza. I see 2 cards in our hand. Unless we have something like a Garland could be nice here as well. Can kind of get some small ping going. Yeah, Garland would be the dream if we don't have the Gorilla. A lot of pressure here. It is the finals, and these players have been playing all day today, so I imagine the stress is at an all-time high. And I imagine this isn't a matchup that Jonathan is particularly familiar with. I don't think on paper it's a very good matchup for Robert, but matchup familiarity is something that's a big strength when you're playing a deck like Robert is, that really doesn't, it's open deck list, so we know what cards are in Robert's deck. But I don't think this is a deck that Jonathan's going to play tested against very much, because it just isn't going to be on many people's radars. This Earth, Water, Realm monster deck. Here's a Beatrix. That's pretty nice, actually. It's going to get the Laswell out of range of this zombie, as well as kind of get some... she kind of represents 2 backups without actually being one. So we're not overcommitting into a Shantoto, which is very important, I think. It's about Robert's only real board clear is going to be the Shantoto. Unless we can get a lot of Miras resolved. And without backups, I really don't know what gets us there. We're double checking the text on Zombie. I mean, I have to imagine that we're dull freezing the Zac here, just to get the... if we dull freeze the Zac, we're guaranteed the ability to attack with the Laswell. We threaten Robert with even more... Interesting. Choosing the zombie. So I guess we're going to go for another Knight here. That does open up some extra vulnerabilities to things like... There's the Charlotte. I mean, that's going to protect the Laswell now from from the Zac even. I still imagine we're going to dull freeze the Zac and then attack with the Laswell anyway. And now it does mean that like something like a Cloud, for instance, can't deal with the Laswell anymore. We're still at least like 2 backups off of that anyway, so it's not like the most impactful Charlotte we've ever had. Robert's going to take a point of damage. It's Gao. I really imagine that's the card we were looking for here the most, as a card that kind of contests at least the Charlotte and makes all of these monsters much more threatening power-wise. Only a 1-of in Robert's deck as well. Can't imagine that's the card he wanted to see get taken away there. See a Ramza, a Charlotte, and a Lilith in hand. We go for another LB here on Robert's side. Also notable here is we can't Shantoto LB anymore, which has to feel pretty good for Jonathan. I mean, it would suck to have to lose all these monsters on Robert's side, especially when you don't have any backups established. But I mean, if it keeps you alive, it keeps you alive, and that's not an option anymore. If we're playing Shantoto, it's got to be the backup. There's a Tyro, but I mean, Tyro with this Laswell doesn't feel very good. We're just going to pass. There's a Gawain in hand. I mean, really, what we're looking for is Garland. If we find Garland, that's the dream. I guess Gawain does represent the ability to get a Garland. We can play the Gawain, get a Steiner and a Garland, play the Garland, get back something like this Delita from the break zone. That's 2 more knights entering the field and makes use of Beatrix's cost reduction for the turn. We can dull freeze this Blue Worm and the Zach, get in for some damage, and push for lethal next turn, assuming Robert doesn't find exactly Shantoto. Seems pretty powerful. It is a decent little cost to go for, because I think we will have to pitch the Ramza if we have the water card to begin with. I don't know if we drew a water card with the Gawain. Do you think we want just some knight entering the field this turn to get the power pump off of the Beatrix? And the dull freeze off of the Laswell. It's just kind of a nice bonus. Yeah, I guess we didn't top deck the water card. I see a looks like a Physalis in hand. It's kind of an interesting one. Charlotte. There's the Physalis. We're going to dull freeze the Blue Worm. All the knights gain 2,000 power from the Beatrix. I wonder if we consider using the Charlotte here. There's if a Garland's in those top 2 cards, it's so good. I mean, it does mean we go minus if we don't find kind of what we're looking for. I'm going to swing with the Beatrix. That's an Animist. You have to push here if you're Jonathan, I imagine. Yep, there's the Charlotte. That's a Sarah. I don't think Robert wanted that either. Here comes the Laswell. Amazed we're not blocking with the Mira. There's a Lena. That's a burst. That's going to draw us a card. And we're just going to go ahead and pass turn there. I guess Jonathan feels in a pretty commanding position. Maybe you don't want to overcommit with the Physalis. I do think like any backup would have been kind of a nice hit. But we also have the Ramza in hand. I don't know if we could consistently do what we want to do with it. Yeah, especially if we hit something like the Ezale. So we're just going to play it slow. If you have the Shantoto, now's the time, Robert. Doesn't look like we do. Looking at an Ahriman. Could also go Leo, try to draw 1 card deeper towards that Shantoto, but Laughing Tarataro just not showing up when she needs to. see a Go-Go in hand. Yeah, here's the Araman. Now, annoyingly, we're just not going to be able to animate this guy. He needs a forward with 9,000 power or more, and we just don't have one. In fact, I don't think the deck plays more than a couple. I think Mira, or not Mira, Phoenix can get there, but we had to use the Phoenix to get the Zack into play, I believe. Ditch two more. That's going to deal with the Charlotte, but the Laswell and the problem it presents is still there, as is the Beatrix. If we go from Jonathan's angle, we're representing lethal next turn too, potentially. We just have to get 3 Dull Freezes. If Robert doesn't do anything, that can be just a Ramza for Corilla. There's the Larcacus. That's going to pull back a monster of cost 3. Of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. The cleave is just not large enough, but it does put 2 more bodies on the field. That might be enough to buy us a turn, but we are really, really on life support. If we have the Rams of Corilla, now's a good time for that push turn, though, because Robert is guaranteed to not have the ability to Shantoto next turn. Just the 1 card in hand. You see a little bit of the frustration there. He knows that card is also probably likely to be forfeit by the end of the turn as well. So we're checking the text on Mira. There's 2 monsters we have to Dull Freeze to be able to do a point of damage. Oh, double checking on Armin. Yeah, Armin is dead here. Armin's not going to be able to become a monster. Ditching 3 for the Ramza, it looks like, using the Beatrix effect. And I don't know if we've seen the Corilla. Double checking the text on Lark. He's just a vanilla once he brings the monster into play. Jonathan must see a lethal line here. Double checking text on Zombie and Blue Arm is the exact same. That's a Gawain in hand. That actually is a great revival target. That is actually even better. Gawain with the 2 cards. That gets us access to the Corilla. Gets a Corilla, and then probably just want to get anything that isn't a dead 2 CP Knight. We're going to go for Big Ramza. You can use the Beatrix cost reduction, play the Ramza, pull back the Corilla. That's going to be 2 more Dull Freezes after this Gawain Dull Freeze hits. We need 1, 2, 3. I think we only need it if we hit 2 Knights with the Corilla that we can play. We're a little low on names. I think it's just... We have what? Delita... It's going to hit the zombie. Yeah, Delita, Lilith, Charlotte. I see, I think, at least 1 or 2 Charlottes in the break zone, and all 3 Delitas are gone. Ditch the whole hand for Ramza. In comes the Corilla. Hitting the blue worm. That's going to mean the Mira can't represent an infinite blocker for the turn. Hit the Larcacus. There's the Lilith. I think that's going to do it. Garland, we dull freeze the Mira, dull the 4 knights that came in this turn to the Ramza, swing out. I think Jonathan is going to be the Materia Cup champion right here. Garland goes in, gets back the Delita. We can fire these 4 knights, kill the Zac, swing in. All these forwards are huge on Jonathan's side, too. 4 knights entering this turn. It's 8k power boost to the 3 that started here on the field. Just has to double check. I mean, I think the only way that we lose is if we try to target the... I mean, even if we target the Mira with the 4 knights, we can sack the Mira in response. But we still have 3 knights available to attack. It just needs to be... It has to be an EX burst that removes a forward. I don't know if Robert has any of those. It's 3 Tyros, 3 Lenas. Swinging in. There's a Realm. There's the Beatrix. There's the Shantoto. And Jonathan is your 2024 Materia Cup champion. GG's. Once again, huge thank you to Michael Byrne. Go give him a follow. Do all the good stuff. Thanks again to Square Enix and Hyper Japan for allowing me to commentate these. And I will see you all, hopefully, at a future Materia Cup. Thank you for watching.